Hey there, guys. Welcome to episode 2 of Exodus. This is part 2, as promised, of the Exodus series, which I mentioned in the first installment of Exodus that there would be 4 parts. Now, in this particular episode, I'm going to focus on the first 5 plagues in Exodus, mostly because there's a lot to get into with regards to what the messages behind the plagues apply to in our everyday life and, what we can learn from the situation. So for those of you who are new, welcome. This is a space of love, understanding, healing, and growth, where we share with each other the things that are happening in our spiritual journey. And I also share with you tips and tricks, as well as, things that I have been led to share with you from the Most High to help make your ascension journey or your spiritual journey much more easier to understand and flow through. So we're all in this together, and if you're family, karibu tena, you are very, very welcome here. Now let's just jump in without further ado. So the first plague was turning water into blood. Now, when I read through this first plague, this song Man in the Mirror by Michael Jackson kept playing, and this particular line was being emphasized, where he was saying, I'm looking at the man in the mirror, I'm asking him to change his ways. Now, at first, I didn't understand how this applied as a lesson with regards to the first plague, but then it all started to make sense once I started writing down my notes for this podcast. So, let's dive straight in. Now, we all know that water is life. We are made up of over 70% of water, but symbolically, water carries very, very many meanings. So, it really depends on the situation in which you encounter water, but we'll get into symbolism of objects and living beings in another episode. Now, for this case in particular, water symbolizes clarity of truth and falsities. So water was used here as kind of a mirror of sorts. As the Pharaoh was coming down the Nile, Moses and Aaron met him at the banks to confront him, which means that God, source, universe is and has been bringing us to a point where we are confronted with situations that mirror back to us what we put out energetically. So remember from the previous episode, we found that the character of Pharaoh actually symbolizes our ego, our shadow selves, or the oppressor, or things that oppress us, things that make us feel fearful, afraid, anything that just basically lowers your power. Now, the use of blood as a sign of God's power symbolizes that we are all one, because everybody bleeds, and this shows that we are really on the same journey, whether we're aware of it or not. So you'll find that in many parts of the Bible, blood is used to represent the soul. So this was meant to show us that we are truly just one soul. And us being different, in different bodies is just an illusion. So we are God experiencing himself through different people, but we are not separate. Now, the fact that the Pharaoh's magicians did the same thing is symbolic of that illusion that I'm speaking about, that illusion that we are now living in, mistaking it for reality. So these magicians are, quote unquote, the people who serve the negative polarity, who are focused on making you believe that you are not part of God, or making you believe that you are not who you are for the sake of their own selfish gain. Now, this also really shows that we have continued to allow others who seek to maintain separation consciousness to cheat us into continuing to believe in their lies. Now, as we go along, especially with everything that's been happening in the world, we can see that you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all of the people all of the time. So throughout the plagues, we witnessed the patience of God, just him showing us that he's willing to show us in many different ways, because he is so sure of his victory. He's already planned the ending. He is the Alpha and the Omega, that we are more than what we have been made to believe we are. Now, moving on to the second plague. This was really fun to analyze, because for a long time I really thought that it meant something else. So I'm very happy to share what the truth of the frogs over the land as a plague means symbolically for our lives. All praise to Jah, of course. Now, the frog as a spiritual symbol usually reminds us about the value of honesty. So it reminds us to address our feelings and emotions rather than ignoring them. Now, most of us are used to just repressing our emotions, not addressing things that make us feel uncomfortable. Now, the symbolism of the frog really pushes us to feel things, because feeling things allows you to grow. So the significance of this animal as the second plague shows us that the only way to free ourselves from the shackles of mental slavery is to be honest with ourselves about things that no longer serve us. It's really important to follow your instincts and trust your gut feelings on everything. Alternatively, the frog as a totem can also symbolize coming into your power. So I see this as God, subliminally telling the Israelites that they are coming into their power. And also just note, when I mention the Israelites, it does not mean the Israelites as we know them now. And I think that's where we really have gone wrong, as trying to term God's people as a specific nation or a specific religion or a specific social class. The Israelites is just a symbolic term for people who are spiritual, people who have chosen to follow God. Now, coming into your power is always done by purifying the soul. You need to release emotional baggage, and you have to always come from a place of personal integrity. So the frog basically means that, you're reminded that you should make all of your choices based on what is right for you. Now, the third plague was the lice infestation. Now, when lice come to our attention normally in daily life, it's an indication that your subconscious is trying to tell you to let go of some pesky people or ideals in your lives. So when you're being sucked dry by too many responsibilities, too many obligations, or torn into too many directions, the louse comes to your attention as a message to withdraw yourself from being, withdraw yourself and resist being pulled into situations that you do not wish for yourself. Now, if you turn to Exodus chapter 8, verse 23, it really emphasizes that, this is also kind of a symbol of karma for those who have been used to sucking other people dry. So, quote unquote, what I like to call energy vampires. The indication of this plague shows that anybody who chose to suck somebody dry in any way, shape, or form is now experiencing this at this particular time, or has been experiencing karma for the past few months. Now, going into the fourth plague, which was insects and gnats, the gnat specifically, as a spirit animal, asks us to be mindful of where we give our attention. So you'll see gnats appearing when, you feel overwhelmed by factors that you feel that you can't control in your life. And usually these are minor and not worth obsessing or dwelling on. So these feelings will usually come up when you've allowed a situation to make you feel powerless. So the gnats, because they're really tiny and small and harmless, they can seem overwhelming when bombarding you with their presence. But basically their significance is to show you to not allow something small and trivial to dominate your thoughts and life, because where your thoughts go, energy flows. So gnats often go away when the seasons change, and that's like a literal physical fact. You'll see gnats going away when seasons change. So for me, symbolically, that means when you decide to take power of your thoughts, these quote unquote gnats will go away in your life. So I want you to just take some time to ask yourself, what are the temporary issues that you may be spending too much time focusing on in your life? Another thing to notice about gnats is the fact that they are super persistent. Despite being constantly shooed away like flies, they are always determined to land on your freshly poured drink or, fruits. But they can be a reminder that you must be persistent if you want to achieve your goals. And because we are reading this within the context of the Bible and Exodus, it means that you need to be persistent if you want to release what doesn't serve you in your life. Because as we read earlier, what doesn't serve you in your life is like a louse. It's very difficult to get rid of lice. So the only way to get rid of lice is to be as persistent as they are. Yeah. So I like to look at gnats as representing kind of being a survivor. I'm hearing Destiny's Child. I'm a survivor. I'm not gonna give up. I'm not gonna stop. The point of the story here is that you're not meant to give up. If you are truly on this journey for truth, if you are truly seeking to break the shackles of your quote-unquote mental slavery prison, this manifests for us in many different ways in our lives. Like, you may need to overcome odds with regards to moving past religious factors, especially things religiously that are pulling you down, that you feel are making you stagnant. This also applies to things with regards to your culture or your family background or social background, social class. So if you feel these factors surrounding you are making you feel stagnant, don't allow these minor irritants to control your entire life. This is where we are being told that we are in control of what we want. So the only way to change your current reality is to be like a gnat and to be persistent. Show the universe over and over again what you want your life to be like, and don't pay attention to the things that you don't want it to be like. Law of attraction, simply put, in the Bible. If you move on to Exodus chapter 8 verse 26, it really emphasizes the importance of knowing that we cannot heal where we got sick. And I think that's very self-explanatory, because it talks about Moses asking the Pharaoh if they could go and sacrifice to the Lord in the wilderness for 3 days. For me, reading through that particular line, I got the sense that for you to be able to focus on the life that you're trying to create, for you to be able to focus on how you want your life to be and focus on breaking out of the shackles, you can't stay in a place where those lice are more in number. So you need to go to a place where your fellow gnats are, the people who are working towards the same goals as you, the people who have the same beliefs as you. Just go where you are loved, go where you are accepted. Now, the final plague is very, very significant for very many reasons. This is the death of livestock. Now, you guys know I'm in love with numerology, and number 5 symbolizes drastic change, like change that cannot be reversed. For example, what we've been going through this year and even last year. So the death of the livestock is part of the plagues where I think God gets the most feisty, and I love it. I say this because it's here that God gives his last subliminal warning to those who choose to infest his spiritual warriors with falsities by pretending to be like them, talking like them, acting like them. Just note again how I mentioned earlier that wherever in the Bible the phrase "my people" is mentioned, it refers to anyone who chooses to follow God or to follow their spirituality. It does not refer again to a specific country, religion, or social class. I feel the need to repeat that again, especially with the tension that's been happening in the Middle East. I choose to not comment on that at this time, but I feel that it is important for me to just really emphasize the fact that I am not referring to a specific country, specific religion, or a social class, okay? Those are all man-made things, and only spirit lives here. So moving on to Exodus chapter 9 verse 2, which says, "For if thou refuse to let them go, and if thou still withhold them," I feel like this signifies that if they, which is referring to those people that serve the negative polarity, should be determined to infest those who are focused on a spiritual path. It's evident that, from the significance of the word refusing, that they are very determined. So hence the phrase "to refuse to let go" means to be determined to not leave. So again, going back to that terminology of them being like lice, for lice to leave, it's very difficult. You have to kill them. And from the significance of the withholding, for me, that's like them wanting to still infest you with, their evil spirits and all that stuff. So in regard to those who are infested, being withheld by evil spirits, so those people who feel like they cannot leave a situation, they feel bound to a situation, I want you to know something very particular. When an evil spirit or an evil polarity assaults anybody, please note that this is not like what you think an evil spirit is, like you can see it has horns or something. These things are not seen, and they manifest in other people. Now, when they assault an innocent person, they know how to fashion themselves into the likes and the dislikes that belong to that person. So for example, if they know that you're a Buddhist and you do yoga and all that stuff, they'll pretend to be exactly like you, and they will take the time to master the pleasant feelings connected with your principles to complete the act. So these quote-unquote negative polarities or evil spirits will then withhold any man or woman who they are infesting as if bound. You'll know that you need to leave a situation, but you will feel like you're unable to let go of it. So that's how you'll know if you are in a situation with somebody who is like this. So the only way that you can escape any of this is through the Lord's divine aid. That is the only way. Please stay mindful, meditate on the energies that you feel unsure about. If you're willing to let go of the slavery mentality, I assure you, mighty forces will come to your aid. So that's about it for the first 5 plagues. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope it helps elevate you back to the state that you truly are. Hey there.